Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in our series Let's Have Fun with AI, or perhaps for this particular video, let's really nerd out with our OCD with with artificial intelligence. Because what I want to do in this video is, have you ever collected a stash of receipts from your grocery store, your local gas station, or whatever, and you have wondered, could I take all these receipts and extract meaningful information and create some kind of data visualization with how much money am I spending every month on groceries or something like that? So, surprise, surprise, in this video, I'm gonna teach you how to do that. So in this video, what I did was I took this pile of gas receipts that I get whenever I go to the gas station and I fill the tank of my car. And then what I did was I used the Vision API in OpenAI. So at the time of the recording of this video in July 2024, ChatGPT has the capacity to see images and to understand images. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this API, and we're basically going to write a script that is going to go over a bunch of images in our system. So those images are going to be a collection of receipts that I have scanned with my phone, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask ChatGPT to look at each one of those images and to give us the meaningful information that we want to extract from those receipts. That's going to be the dates, the gallon, the price per gallon, by running a for loop and sending a request to ChatGPT. With each one of the images in our file system, we're going to get responses from ChatGPT that looks something like this. It's going to give us the data that we want. We're going to save all that data in a large array of JSON objects, and then we're going to write like a very simple script that is going to take that JSON object and it's going to turn it into something that is a bit easier to read for people who are not computer programmers, which is going to be a CSV file or something that looks pretty much like this. A table with each column for a date, the gallons, the price per gallon, and the total price of each one of the receipts that I have scanned with my phone. So if you're interested in seeing how to implement this, which is actually very easy, so feel free to continue to this video. And just a word of warning, in this video, as opposed to the ones that I typically have in my channel, I'm actually not going to code everything from scratch. I'm not going to describe every single line. I'm just going to describe the overall process that I followed in order to achieve this goal, so that the video is a little shorter. But if you're actually interested in the nitty-gritties of every single line of code that I wrote in order to get there, I recommend that you check the live stream where I recorded this video. There's going to be a link to that live stream in the description of this video, but also one popping up in the corner. There was also going to be a card popping up in the corner of this video as of right now. Over there. All right, beautiful. So let's get hands-on and nerd out with computer vision that is aided by OpenAI's ChatGPT. All right, let's get started. And let's start by creating the framework, the infrastructure that we're going to need in order to start this project. So what I've done is I've created this new folder. I just call it Receipt Parser. And inside I have created a folder called Images. And inside of these images, I've basically pasted all the photos of all the receipts that I took with my phone. So as you can see, I went one by one and then I took a photo, like as frontal as possible with my phone. I tried to do it in as high resolution as possible, because if you have a high resolution images, you can always create lower resolution, but the other way it doesn't work, obviously, right? So I basically create like as frontal and as clear as I could of an image for each one of the receipts. Okay, so this took about 5 minutes, but I think it was good. And then what I'm going to do now is we're going to build this project using Node.js, just because I really like this. You could use Python, same thing. And the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to open a terminal here in the folder that I have. You can see that the folder only has the images folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kickstart a Node project by using npm init. What this does is that it basically creates like a set of files that start this project, and I'm going to, the package name is going to be called Receipt Parser, the description is going to be whatever, and then I'm going to start it with a file that is called parse receipts, and everything else I'm just going to go with the defaults. All right, and then you can see that I already have a package JSON file, and I'm going to create a new file here that I'm going to call parse receipts, and then that's going to be a JavaScript file. All right, beautiful. The moment I do that, I can open an instance of Visual Studio Code, and then I can drag my entire folder in Visual Studio Code. And you can see that I now have the package.json file, which has nothing right now on it, and the parse receipt files, which is empty. Okay. But technically speaking, I have a Node.js project right now with all the elements that I need. So I could technically say node parse receipts, and then I could start my project from the terminal, right? The parse receipts has nothing right now in it, so we're going to start adding some code to make parse receipts work. The first thing that I've done is I have created the baseline of my Node project, which is going to be just basically going through the images folder and figuring out all the names of the files and just printing them to the console. So for that, I basically loaded some regular system libraries. I created this new function that is called parse images with ChatGPT, because at the end of the day, this function will become the one that calls ChatGPT and does all the parsing. And for the time being, I've just made a very simple functionality. I've just created a very simple functionality, which is basically loading all the files from the images folder and then computing the full paths and then printing those to the console. So if I now run node parse receipts, what you can see is that it's basically printing down all the files, all the images that it found on the images folder. Okay, so very simple. So I think the next thing that we're going to do is that we're now going to try and see how to send these images to ChatGPT. So this is how we're going to do it. In previous videos, you may have seen me talk to ChatGPT manually, and actually I have a bunch of examples where I did that with Node and with Python, creating the requests completely from scratch. So if you want to see some of those videos, there's going to be a card popping up on the corner of the screen, and there will also be a description and a link in the description of this video. But for this video, I'm basically going to save myself a little bit of typing and use the tools that already come with OpenAI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the OpenAI module on my system, on my project. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the library in my Node project, and I'm going to create a client using the API key that I have already obtained by creating an account with OpenAI and by creating an environment variable in my system with this name that contains the key. This is something, this practice is very good practice because it keeps the key safe and you don't have to share it in code or you don't have to version it. The reasons why this is useful, I also have a video on how to get your OpenAI key. There will be another card popping up in the corner of this video, so make sure you check it out. All right. And then what I have added to the code before is I have added a whole chunk where we're basically going to go file by file, and we're going to do the following. For each one of the files, we're going to load the file and we're going to convert it to what's called a base64 format. That's basically taking the binary representation of the image and then turning it into a bunch of digits, numbers, and characters so that it's easier to transfer as a JSON file. And then we're actually going to send that request to ChatGPT. What that means is that using the client chat completions API, this video is being recorded in July of 2024. If you're watching this in the future, maybe you have to change a few things, but ChatGPT can actually handle vision. So that's why we use the chat completions one. And as of this recording, we're going to be using the GPT-4o model. If you're watching this from the future, you're probably at ChatGPT 5, 6, 6 Pro. I have no idea where we're going with this, right? And the message that we want to send is going to start as a very simple message. The question that I'm going to ask to ChatGPT with text is, what is in this image that I'm sending you here, right? And then the rest of the content is going to be the image as a base 64 image. All right. What does this mean? It means that I am sending to ChatGPT, I am sending this base 64 blob that I have created here. All right. Now, because the response might be quite large, I'm actually cranking up the maximum tokens that I'm asking ChatGPT to give me. And then after that, for the time being, at this stage, I'm just simply going to dump the response here on the screen, okay? And see how that works. So I'm going to clear my screen and I'm going to say node parse receipts, and I'm going to see what's going on. So I basically just sent the request, but because the images are so high resolution and so high in quality, I have not post-processed them at all. It's going to take quite some time. Right now, it basically took, what did it take? It took 12 seconds to complete. And it's probably going to cost me like 1 or 2 cents every time I do this. But you can see that it's already working. So I'm going to stop this. And you can see that for the first image, which was this one, you can see that I get the address. This is the receipt of a Shell gas station. Very good. This is the address. So you can see that the address is correct. How many gallons? 11,797, which is also good. Total fuel sale, $38.92. So that's also good. So it's looking like it's working. It's looking like it's working well. You can see that it's looking like it's working well. So what about the second receipt, the next one? This is an image from a Shell gas station located at blah, blah, blah. And the total amount was 11 gallons and 350, so that's good. The transaction was $40.05, so that's good. So it's looking great, right? However, and this is the important part, I want you to notice something. I want you to notice that, and I'm going to maximize this, the ChatGPT, because it doesn't quite have memory from one request to the other, what it's basically doing is that it's giving me responses in formats that are very different from each other. So for example, the first response, it gave me a response in this kind of format where it basically gave me a one line per item, right, of the concept that I want to extract from this receipt. But for the second one, it just gave me this kind of paragraph, not a line by line situation where the information is still there. You have the address, you have the gallons, you have the price, but the format is very different. So if what I want is to end up with a CSV file that looks something like this, something where the data is very structured and very homogeneous, etc., then getting these responses in this kind of like whatever format decided by ChatGPT is not quite going to work. So what I need to do is I need to prime ChatGPT, or in other words, I need to bias ChatGPT, or in other words, I need to be very, very specific in asking ChatGPT to give me the information that I want in a very, very specific format. So I actually need to write a much more elaborate prompt where I'm going to ask ChatGPT exactly what I want, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me what I want in a very, very specific format so that I can parse it properly. All right. What that looks like is going to require a little bit of prompt engineering. You may have heard that concept before. So let me show you what prompt engineering in this particular case is going to look like. Check out what I just did. So I've created a new variable. I'm calling this prompt. And in the prompt, I'm going to ask very, very specifically about what I want. And I'm also going to prime ChatGPT by telling ChatGPT the role that I want it to take. So look at what I'm doing here. I'm saying you are parsing car gas receipts. So this is what you're doing. You are provided the image of a receipt, and I need you to extract the following information from it. And I'm going to be very explicit about it. I want the date, I want gallons, I want the price per gallon, and I want the total price. All right. And then the only thing that I have replaced is that in the text prompt, instead of asking, what is this image that I'm sending you, I have included this prompt. If I run this, I'm gonna get the following information. So I just did that. And for the first 4 receipts, look at what I got. I actually got something very reasonable, which is here is the information. And let me remind you of the first receipt. It was this one, right? So the first one was the date is correct, the gallons are correct, the price per gallon is correct, and then the total price also is. And I'm going to assume that for the following ones, it's also going to be pretty correct. So 43.18 and 42.30. You can see that it's kind of working, all right? It's actually working pretty well. Now, this is a bit more homogeneous than what we had before, but still, if I now wanted to use code to extract information from all of this, you can see that there will be a lot of cleanup and a lot of post-processing that I would need to do. I would need to, for example, I don't really care about any of this. Here's the extracted information. Then there's all this like asterisk stars that is probably some kind of like markdown annotation. Then there's all these new line characters. Sometimes I'm getting this weird G, sometimes I'm not getting G. So it would require like quite a significant amount of cleanup. So it turns out that I can even be more explicit to ChatGPT and say, hey, you know what? You're going to give me the information that I'm asking for, but I actually want it in a very, very particular format with these very particular rules. And then I'm going to try to have ChatGPT be the one who cleans up all this information and gives me like a very lean, very clean object that then I can parse very easily. So let's see, how would we do that? One of the best ways to structure this information is to ask for a JSON object as part of the response. A JSON object, as you probably already know if you're watching this video, is basically this object that is made up of key value pairs, where we have a key that is telling us what the information is, so date, gallons, price per gallon, total price, and then we have the value, which is whatever is going to be included and attached to that key. So turns out that ChatGPT, it has been trained on tons of human text, but it had also been trained on tons of computer code. So ChatGPT is actually pretty good at JSON formats. So what we can do is we can very explicitly ask ChatGPT, I want you to return the information in a JSON object. And I want you to use the following schema. Schema is basically a way of saying the template for the JSON file that I want you to return to me. So that's going to be date, and I want you to give me that as a string. And I'm actually asking ChatGPT to give me the string in year, month, and date format to make my life a little easier. So I want the gallons as a number, I want the price per gallon as a number, and the total price as a number as well. If you do that, I just run the request, and I did get something like this. So for the first image, I got something that now is getting closer to what I want. So you can see that I get the date, the gallons, the price per gallon. I get it as a JSON file, and I'm not getting the G numbers, etc., etc. But I can also see that the second attempt, ChatGPT went a little off the road and was like, yeah, based on the information that you gave me, this is what I found, and here's the JSON object with the extracted information. And then it gives me the JSON object, but after a lot of this kind of explanatory text as well, all right? Another thing that I want you to notice is that the JSON object is not given to me just as an object, just as a JSON string, but it actually has all this weird stuff which is these 3 backslashes and then this word JSON on top of it, and is closed by these 3 backslashes as well. This is actually what's called markdown annotation, which is a way of writing code for HTML rendering that is very popular in the world, but is an annotation that is also going to be very unuseful for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to improve the prompt, and we're actually going to ask ChatGPT to give us like a clean JSON with nothing on it, no decoration, no explanations, no markdowns. Let me write that request for you here. So this is what I added to our prompt. what you can see now is that I'm trying to constrain the freedoms of ChatGPT by telling it to not include markdown formatting in the response. I do not want any explanatory notes like, hey, this is what I'm giving you, blah, blah, blah. I don't want any new line characters, dollar characters, and other symbols. Any new line character, dollar, or other symbols. Stick to strings and numerical notation. So I just want like the cleanest notation that you can give me, and make sure that the JSON object is valid. By doing that, I have obtained something like this. As you can see, each response is now much cleaner. It looks like it's really sticking to the JSON format. It's not giving me weird characters anywhere, except for the new line character, which it's still giving me as part of the JSON, but actually cleaning that up is something that it's very easy to do. Okay, so I think with that, I am ready to now take this JSON information and then be able to turn it into, and be able to save it somewhere and then turn it into a CSV file. So let me show you how I did it. So I'm going to scroll down all the way to where we receive the parsed response from ChatGPT. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, if you remember, the data is under content. So I'm going to go to response, choices, message, content. I'm going to take that string, and then I'm going to try, and this is very important, I'm going to try to parse that JSON string into an actual object that is native to JavaScript. And then if that worked well, what I'm going to do is to this new data array that I have created, I'm going to push a new object. I'm going to push a new object that is going to be this object. It's going to be the file name. It's going to be the requisition time. So when did the request go through? And then inside of the data, I'm going to add this parse data object, okay, which is everything that we have just obtained, okay? And the reason why I'm using the try catch clause is that sometimes ChatGPT may just not do a fantastic, perfect job. And the JSON string that it might give us back may have some weird characters, may have something off, and then the conversion from a string of characters to an actual perfectly formatted and valid JSON object may not succeed. In that case, I have added here a message like, hey, just print to the console that something went wrong. Okay, but in that case, we basically would just miss that receipt. We would not parse it correctly. Correct. So, and then, but if everything went well after the for loop where we go over each one, then what we do now is we just basically write to a file called parse receipts. We're gonna stringify and write the whole data array into that file. So what does that look like? Look at what I've done. So I ran this before. It took like a good 2 or 3 minutes, but it went through the whole thing. For each receipt, it created the request. It obtained a JSON object with the date, the gallons, the total price, etc., etc. And then after we finished with each one of the images, the data was saved to this file. So I'm adding a what's called a timestamp. So the timestamp to the name of the file, so that if we do this multiple times, the files don't overwrite each other. And this file looks something like this. You can see that now I have a very nice and clean JSON file, which starts with an array, and then the array has a collection of objects, each object being the name of the image, when the time of the requisition was done, and then the data, which has been parsed by ChatGPT in the form of a date that is a string and a bunch of numbers representing the gallons, the price per gallon, and the total price. So at this point, I feel satisfied and I feel complete, and I think we have succeeded in parsing all these receipts and parsing all the data and obtaining a systematic, uniform data structure that contains all this part information. And as a programmer, I'm actually very happy to have this information in a JSON file. However, I understand that many people, or if you're going to share this information with someone else, I understand that sharing it in a non-JSON format, something like, for example, a CSV file, might be more useful to other people who don't have perhaps the expertise or the knowledge for parsing JSON information, reading JSON information, or in other words, people who might be more familiar with tabular data, with data that is just in a table with the rows, and every row is an entry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to write another very quick script that is going to read this file, and then it's going to turn it into a CSV file. So here's what it looks like. So I have created a new script on my Node project that is called Receipt Data to CSV. And then I have basically used Copilot to help me write most of this. So I have imported a new library called fastcsv. Remember, you can do that by npm install fastcsv, and then you could import that module into your Node project. And then to Copilot, I say, I want something like this. I want you to read a JSON file and give me a CSV. So I did that. And then the way it works right now is that the name of the file that I want to convert is going to be part of my command line call. So what I'm doing here is I am reading the file name that I want to convert from the arguments that are passed to this script. I will show you how that looks like. Then I'm going to parse that with the JSON parser. And then I'm going to export all of that as a CSV. So I'm basically creating the name of the file for the CSV. Then I'm creating a stream of data writing. And then for each item in the data that I have parsed from the JSON, I am sending that item to be written by the CSV writer. The CSV writer then takes the name of the key, it takes the value of the property, and it creates all the CSV automatically. So it's like very convenient because you don't have to do it manually. And the way we run this script is basically by running this. So node receipt to data.csv, and then it's going to take the name of the file as an argument. So you can see that right there, I have typed the name of the JSON. And then as I do this, it's almost instant. And then you can see that in my folder, I now have a CSV file that if I double click, it's going to look something like this. Now you can see that I have a very clean CSV file with the image, with the requisition time, with the date, the gallons, price per gallon, something very tabular that will then be super easy to just feed into some kind of, I don't know, we can plot a graph with dates and the price of gasoline across the different rates. I don't know. You know, that then you can do whatever you want with this kind of structure. It makes things very easy at this point. Before we finish, I want to show you what other possibilities you can have here. Because remember, the receipt actually does have a lot of information. So in our script, we've basically only looked at the gallons, the price per gallons, the total price, and the date. But there's actually a lot of stuff that you can extract from this ticket. So in the version that I did for myself, I really wanted to nerd out. So in the prompt to ChatGPT, I was actually giving it a very exhaustive schema of how I wanted the data to be given to me. So I wanted the date, and I wanted also a confidence score on the date. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but machine learning, whenever it gives you a prediction, the machine learning does have a degree of confidence of how strongly it believes that the prediction is correct, right? So in order to measure the correctness of the data that I was getting, I was interested in asking ChatGPT for the degree of confidence. I actually don't know if this works truly and if it's giving me the real confidence score for each one of those markers, but it was an attempt that I did. I also wanted the time. I wanted the time in Unix form. I wanted the gas station name, the address, the gallons, the price per gallon, the total price, and the credit card digits. I also included that as part of the request. And then I did get something like this. So you can see that the data CSV that I obtained was a bit more exhaustive. It had more data. It had the gas name. It had the address. So you can see that pretty much most of the time I'm going to the gas station that is next to my house, right? And then and then some other information, the card digits, etc. And interestingly, something else that I did was I included a certain kind of, let's call it like a safety check, because because some of the data that is related in these tickets is actually related to each other. So, for example, if we know from the receipt that the price per gallon is $3.7 and then we got 11.2 gallons, then it clearly follows that the total price that we get should be a multiplication of the price per gallon by how many gallons we got, right? And if that is not the case, then one of the three numbers is wrong. So what I did was, somewhere in the code, I included like a check. So give me in my data, give me the multiplication of the number of gallons and the price per gallon and the total price, and compare it to total price. What I did that was, and then I added a new column called total price is valid, and then whether if this is, and this was not something that I asked to ChatGPT, this is actually a manual calculation that I did in my script as a way to reinforce, to make sure that the parsing of the data was actually correct. Okay? Beautiful. So from here, there's just so many things you can do. I implemented this for gas receipts, but you could do this for groceries. You could do this for clothes shopping. You can do this for your Amazon receipts. You can do this for many things, and you can start to analyze like large collections of physical data, but just taking photos of it and just using ChatGPT to smartly parse through those photos and extract whatever information is meaningful to you. So as you have seen in these videos, I have not gone through every detail of every line of code just because I wanted to make the example and the video a bit leaner. But if you're actually interested in seeing how I wrote the code and my thinking process as I was creating those scripts, you're more than welcome to check the live stream where I recorded this video, which and there will be like a card popping up on the corner of this video, and there will also be a link to that live stream here in the description of this video. And also, just a friendly reminder, there is a copy of all this code and all these scripts in our Parametric Camp GitHub. So there should also be a link to where you can find this code. If you didn't want to follow through and copy from the video, you can just download all the code from our Parametric Camp GitHub. Just remember that if you download it, before you actually run anything, you will need to go and say npm install so that you download the modules on your system before you can actually run anything. Okay? So beautiful. I hope you had fun watching this video. I hope it triggered your curiosity. I hope now you want to try running this script with some receipts that you may collect yourself. And if you do, please, 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 please let us know if you did anything cool with this by leaving a message here in this video, by joining our Discord and showing us what you did. I would be super happy if you actually figured out something cool to do with this new technique that you may have learned from this video. All right? Beautiful. Well, with that, thank you very much for watching this video. And if you found it fun, interesting, whatever, maybe consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, saying hi, and all those things. All right? Thank you very much, and see you on the next video. Bye-bye.